What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Nvidia stock, ticker symbol NVDA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Wednesday, May 1st. All right, guys, Nvidia here today in regular trading hours, down $13.55 a share. That's minus 1.54%. However, in the after hours, down an additional about 1.5%. What's going on here, guys, is we got earnings from a variety of companies here today, one of which was AMD. Now, AMD actually, they posted a small beat on both earnings and revenue. However, as we've discussed a lot here on the channel, guidance is everything. Guidance trumps it all, especially as of late. And AMD posted in-line guidance, about 6% annual growth year over year for the current quarter. Okay, and that was just in line with Wall Street's expectations, and especially in the chip sector as of late, in line is evidently not quite good enough. So Nvidia is getting dragged down a bit here in the after hours, but you know, this is more of an AMD drama story. So volume's a little bit lower, okay, but it's relevant, of course, to Nvidia, so we have to consider that, but volume is a little bit lower, so I'm curious to see where we end up once the volume pours in off the open tomorrow. But let's take a look at Nvidia here. We'll do, again, we'll look under the hood, pull out some bias out of the volume profile. We'll take a look at the psychological levels that I think we, big money and traders are going to be paying attention to here tomorrow. And then we'll finish out, of course, as always, with the expected move and the directional bias coming out of the chain. So let's get started here with our quick volume profile analysis on the 5-minute chart. We will include that after hours as well. Listen, by the way, if you are new here, guys, Nvidia is a daily upload, so I appreciate you subscribing to the channel. My next goal, it's a relatively big one. The goal is to hit 10,000 subscribers as soon as we can. I had set a 7,000 subscriber goal. You guys blew that away, so thank you. I appreciate it. And I will keep the Nvidia videos coming each and every day. But if we take a look here, again, what we're really doing is looking under the hood. We're peeling back a layer of the onion and trying to pull out deeper information that we can, because look, the price action's over and done with. We know what happened, but there's more information to be had here than just what the stock price did. So we're looking for bias that either supports or is neutral in the face of more aggressive moves. Okay, that tells us a big story, because even equal moves don't have to be created equal. So let's take a look here. I want to look at this pop off the open and then fade, and then this after hours move to see if there's anything we can pull out, even though volume is a little low. Contextual open, we did get some volume pops here. However, that was really on that intraday high of 888.19, and then volume tanked off. This is kind of a mixed bag. So really off the open, guys, it's pretty mixed. I can't really pull any bias out of that open. As we move through the day here, relatively contextual for the most part. We had a few pops. This one kind of offset by, surrounded by those green bars. Not really any obvious fading compared to the red bars. Of course, we have this one little pop. Too much of a risk of fooled by randomness on one 5-minute bar. We had a pyramid shape, okay? The green didn't quite fade off quickly enough for me to not really assign that as neutral, kind of more or less canceling each other out, maybe with a tiny little couple percent bearish bias. Again, we're kind of splitting hairs at that point. And then here we got a couple of red pops. Again, too much of a risk of fooled by randomness. I prefer consecutive red bars or green bars to really pull out any substantial bias. Once we pull into the close here, this big green bar here, remember, that's the first 5-minute bar after the bell. On a stock like Nvidia, guys, it's very normal as of late to see a really high volume first 5-minute bar after the bell. Okay, the reason is rebalancing. Big money, smart money, funds, institutions. The algorithms are triggering to rebalance for the day to show on paper what they want to show for their clients. Now, in the after hours, this really puts into perspective of just how low volume is. Again, this isn't really Nvidia specific. This is more AMD and market specific. However, of course, it being AMD, it's going to rub off on Nvidia, but it doesn't drive a whole lot of volume. So I'm taking this with a grain of salt, because when volume's low, that means the sample size of opinion is low, right? And honestly, guys, as far as bias, we see this fade move occurring, right? That's a relatively aggressive downside move. I'm really not seeing like tremendous bearish bias. If we were seeing 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 shares, I mean, even just 100,000 shares on these red bars pretty consistently and then lower on the green bars, that would be a different story. We're not seeing that. There isn't tremendous bearish bias in the after hours when you look at the volume profile. However, the price action still faded downside. So bears, you guys would really want to see tremendous bearish bias in the volume profile to support that downside move to really get kind of like a double whammy of confidence going. Whereas bulls, you want anything that doesn't support what already happened on the chart, and we're not really seeing a tremendous bias, I suppose, unfortunately for bears. But again, remember, this is just one factor of many. So let's move on. Let's take a look at the psychological self-fulfilling prophecy levels here on the 30-minute chart. You guys remember yesterday, right? We were talking about that 50-period moving average on the 30-minute. I really wanted to see that hold. Now, we tried holding above it today. We faded in pre-market. I don't trust pre-market or after hours upside breaks or downside breaks of psychological levels. The volume is just too low. So I like to wait until the volume pours in. We tried to get a push and we faded hard downside. Well, I suppose I can't really say hard, right? We faded downside below that 50-period moving average and held beneath there, trying one more time on that last 30-minute bar and fading right before the close. Now, look, guys, again, in the after hours, it looks like we're testing the 200-period. Context is so important. Volume is so low, guys. Okay, and this fade, upon the close, we were much closer to the 50-period, and then we faded. Okay, so tomorrow, we have to leave this a little bit more open-ended. Tomorrow, what I'm really looking for from, let's start with a bearish perspective. Bears, you really want to see an intraday downside break of the 200-period. If it breaks in pre-market, that's fine. It's not the end of the world, but either way, I want to see it retest intraday with high volume. Well, I don't want to say tremendously high volume because I want to see the retest occur intraday, and then I want to see tremendously high volume on the rejection. Okay, because that's confirmation of this 200-period becoming short-term resistance. Whereas bulls, ultimately the goal is to get back up and reclaim the 50-period with a high volume breakup through, low volume retest, high volume bounce away, right? Confirming that as short-term support. Now, the 4-hour chart, let's take a look. Now you guys can see here that on the 4-hour, we were really battling for that 200 period, and we now rejected. A couple of wiki candles fading downside. Again, keep in mind, the 4-hour is a little weird because it gives us 8 hours of data in a 6.5-hour trading day. So the second bar on a 4-hour chart, a lot of times, well, really always, is going to include some after hours data. So the stock actually closed today right about there, right over 864, okay? And then pulled back in after hours, when AMD reported earnings. But the current channel, the relevant channel really on the 4-hour chart is that 50 period right around 834, 834.50, and the 200 period right around 878 or so. So this is really similar to the 30-minute. Listen, bears, ideally, you want to see a downside break of the 50 period. Again, high volume, low volume retest, high volume rejection. Bulls, any downside test of the 50, you want to see that hold with a high volume bounce. I don't care what volume it tests on, as long as the bounce sees above average volume. Now the 200 period, listen, bears, any upside test of that, you want to see that reject on high volume. Again, I don't mind what volume it tests on, as long as we reject on high volume. And bulls, any test of the 200 period, high volume breakthrough, low volume retest, high volume bounce, right? Confirmation of that as a short-term support level. The 4 hours is pretty simple today. Okay, now the daily. The dailies, this is the most important, guys. If you're going to skip any of these charts, please don't let it be the daily. The daily has all the eyeballs. This is by far the most psychologically backed chart on any stock. Nvidia is no exception. And you can see here, guys, that 50-day, which everyone's watching, moving average, is right around 857 right now. Okay? 856.50, 857. The stock, again, this is the daily chart, guys. It's not going to show after hours movement. So the stock in the after hours is right around 850.69. Okay, so if we zoom back in here, let's zoom in even a little bit more. The stock's at 850.69. The moving average is at 856.50 approximately. So in the after hours, we've broken downside and we're sitting kind of right on top of this 850, 850.50, which I'm really just going to call 850, technical level, which has been there long enough. It's kind of turning into a psychological level as well, which tends to be the case. So there's kind of a lot going on here on the daily, right? Things changed after hours, but the story remains very similar. Let's start with bulls. Bulls, here's what I'm watching. I want 850 to hold. Okay, I want 850 to hold. Ideally, I want to see a bounce away from 850 to put some distance between us and 850. Really, I want to see both 850 and the 50-day moving average, which again, everyone's watching, hold, which means I want this thing to hold ideally above like 857. Okay, 860 would be even better because it adds another $10 increment, which can act as a very small psychological level in this price range. Bears, hold below the 50-day, because remember, we're below in the after hours. Hold that move. Any upside tests of the 50-day, you want to see that reject, but ideally, the real goal tomorrow, if you're a bear, get down below 850 as early as possible, turn 850 into a resistance level, get out of this channel from 850 to 9, and head downside below that, right? Just get out of the channel to the downside, claim 850 as resistance, and look in the near future to reject off that area. Bulls, right? If we want a shot at retesting 9, which a reclaim of 900 bucks a share, sets us up for that next level, really to be all-time highs or $1,000 a share. It starts here. It starts with holding 850 and the 50-day moving average. Okay, tomorrow is I don't want to undersell. Like, tomorrow is a pretty big day, psychologically speaking, at least in the short term, right? And on the technicals as well. You know, I say it all the time, and in the very short term, this is all psychology. An earnings event, like a fundamental repricing, that's where the fundamentals come into play in the very short term. But for the very most part, in the short term, this is all psychology. Once you get out to midterm and of course long term, the fundamentals 1000% take over. However, in the short term, it's all psychology, and sometimes, like with an earnings event, you end up with fundamental repricings that quickly kind of turn back into psychology. Now, implied volatility, let's zoom out just to zoom back in a little bit so we can get a little bit more room here. Let's go back a couple of months. Compared to the last 2 or 3 months, we're still seeing IV in, I would say now, like the mid to high range. Okay, up a little bit here from yesterday. Again, just remember though, if you're looking at this compared to the last couple of weeks or the last 1 month or so, IV is high. Context for implied volatility is the name of the game. If you're looking to buy contracts for like 2 weeks out, for example, don't look at IV for the last year. Look at IV for the last month and see where it's at comparatively speaking. Now, if you're looking to buy contracts or like leaps, for example, for a year and a half out, you don't really care where it's at compared to the last 2 weeks. You want to see where it's at for the last 2 years. Okay, context is the name of the game. Compared to the last month, IV is high, potentially a higher potential risk of IV crush in those shorter dated contracts. And compared to the last 2 or 3 months, it's mid to high. Okay? But remember, if you already own purchased contracts that you bought, when IV goes higher, that benefits you. When IV dumps, that sucks a little value out of your contracts through Vega. Okay, important to understand. Now, expected move. Let's take a look. The next expiration we have on Nvidia is, of course, Friday, May 3rd. And the expected move by Friday. Now, this is really important, guys. This is Friday's closing price expectation compared to today's closing price, not today's after hours price. So the expected move by Friday is plus or minus $42.76 per share compared to today's closing price. So if we look here, of course, we know that we don't have earnings or anything. Earnings aren't until mid to late May 22nd. Okay, between now and then. So we can realistically divide that by 3. That gives us $14.25 a share, but we're not done, right? We have to add back 50%. Because that first number, that 14 and change, assumes 3 green days in a row or 3 red days in a row heading into the end of this week. So when we add back 50%, that gives us $21.38 a share, plus or minus expected move by tomorrow's close. Tomorrow's close compared to today's close, 864.02. And just remember, guys, that is the one standard deviation with a little bit of guesswork. I will admit, we have to. We don't have the luxury of daily expirations on Nvidia. Someday we probably will, honestly, but liquidity, I know it's hard to believe, but liquidity probably isn't good enough quite yet. I'm really hoping that someday daily expirations like we have on SPY, for example, it's such a luxury. I really hope we get that at some point on big blue chips like Nvidia, Tesla. That would be great. But right now we have to do a little bit of guesswork. So that's quite literally the one standard deviation expected move, the expected volatility being priced in by the traders. All right, again, a little bit of guesswork involved. And by design, that expected move does not, it's the expected volatility, which is a huge part of the picture when we're trading options in particular, even shares, but especially options. But by design, there's not directional bias baked into the expected move. So we can do one more thing on top of the analysis we've already done, right? Let's take a look at the directional bias out of the options traders here just from today. We had today just under 842,000 total contracts traded. Of those, 522,000 were calls and about 320,000 were puts. So we are seeing just today a call side bias. Okay, now keep in mind, this is as of the close today. So this hasn't considered the after hours movement. This hasn't considered AMD's earnings yet. However, heading like for today during the intraday session, we were seeing a pretty heavy bullish bias. All right, now if we break this down by time frame, right? This video is mostly geared toward tomorrow's trading day. The 0 to 20 delta range, those short-term speculators, about 186,000 calls and about 146,000 puts. So call side bias, a bullish bias out of the short-term speculators here today as well. Again, heading into the close. That cuts off at the close. Listen, guys, every membership tier at that link in the pinned comment that goes for gold all the way through platinum is now getting my daily in-play stock alerts. It's the majority of days. Every once in a while, there's a day where no in-play stocks really pop up. The market is a little bit slower, but these are the stocks that make up the majority of my trading volume, my intraday scalping volume. Because, you know, for me, they offer the most edge. These are stocks usually that have a fresh news catalyst, and they're attracting the vast majority of human, emotional, therefore beatable traders. Right? They're the kind of stocks that are like right in the slot of being big enough to attract a lot of people who make mistakes, who are emotional, right? That's kind of like who I'm trying to play against in these in-play stocks. But they're small enough that they kind of fundamentally present issues for an algorithm trying to participate. So many of them don't participate because they can't put enough money to use. It doesn't make sense for them to do so. I'm alerting these stocks to each membership level now, daily. So, hope to see you join. Again, that link in the pinned comment, that'll let you get grandfathered in at the current rate to make you immune to future price raises. So you'll just stay at whatever price you join at, even as the price goes up for as long as you retain your membership. Listen, guys, if you're getting value out of these daily NVIDIA uploads, I ask you to do one simple thing. It takes half a second. It's 100% free. Please just like the video on the way out and then get out of here and enjoy your day. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.